An advanced robot that looks, sounds, and acts like a young boy learns what it means to be human. Listen as we discuss giving orphans to your friends, bring your kid to work day at the secret lab, and where the U.S. airspace begins. Then we find out if 1985's D.A.R.Y.L stands the test of time.
Test of time, James and Alan have their say. Do the movies you love still hold up today? James says gladiator with a glut, and Alan says as a father blah blah. It's the test of time, James and Alan have their say. Do the movies you love still hold up today? Test of time, James and Alan have their say. Do the movies you love still hold up today?
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Test of Time. My name is Alan Noah, and joining me is the turtle to my D.A.R.Y.L, you, James Brief.
I'll take that. Thanks, Al. I'm James Brief. Welcome, listeners. The Test of Time. This is the podcast where we look at movies that are at least 15 years old. Today, we're going to look at a movie that's 40 years old, and we see if they still stand the test of time.
That's right. But just a quick programming note before we get into this week's movie, D.A.R.Y.L. I believe this is the first episode that will have ads. You probably heard them before we started talking, before the theme song kicked in. It's a new thing that's being offered by Libsyn. That's a service that we use to host the podcast. It's a convenient way for the show to make just a little bit of money. And we're not profiting off of the show. We never have. We've never made a penny off of the show before. If you buy a t-shirt or something from the merch store, we get a couple of bucks, but quite frankly, that's not exactly a robust business for us. And yeah, we've been paying for the podcast hosting for 9 years now. We paid for the microphones, we paid for all the equipment, and that's fine. It's a labor of love. We love doing it. But, Libsyn started offering this as a service, and I thought, yeah, you know what? That's a good idea. That way we can at least just cover the cost of our hosting, and I hope that it's not intrusive having a couple ads at the beginning and end of every episode. If you absolutely hate it, you can write in at Test of Time Pod. But I got to be honest, I listen to so many podcasts, and ads are just a part of it. We're only doing ads at the beginning and the end, not in the middle of the show. So once the theme song kicks in, once we start talking, you won't have to worry about an ad popping up in the middle of the show. So hopefully it's unintrusive, and hopefully it's for cool products. I don't know exactly what it is, but that's a new thing. And I believe it will go retroactively for our old episodes as well. Just wanted to call that out, because if you heard an ad before the show and were like, what the hell is that? That's why. But now that we've got that behind us, let's get into D.A.R.Y.L. This is a movie that you suggested we do, and I'd heard of it, but I'd never seen it. Why did you want to talk about D.A.R.Y.L, James?
Okay, I have wanted to see this movie for decades, because I knew about this movie for two reasons. One, you might be able to guess. What intrigued me, probably. I knew one fact about D.A.R.Y.L.
That it was the kid from Neverending Story?
Exactly, yeah. So,
okay.
And it basically ties into the other thing, is that for some reason, this is a movie I always saw in the video store. And this movie, D.A.R.Y.L, was one of those movies that I just never rented. I knew it was there. It's been in my mind for years, and it randomly popped up on YouTube. I knew nothing about this movie except the basic one-sentence premise.
Okay, and what was that one-sentence premise?
Robot kid.
Okay, I really didn't know anything about the movie, but the title is a spoiler, because
absolutely,
when you see the periods there, you know that it stands for something.
And it's his name. He's a boy.
Right. With the periods, with that being the kid's name, it's not at all surprising. I was curious if it was supposed to be kind of a twist because the movie kind of plays it as a little bit of a twist. And then I was curious, so I went back and watched the trailer. And in the trailer, they do not say the word robot, cyborg, artificial intelligence, anything like that. It makes it pretty clear what D.A.R.Y.L is, but they don't officially say it.
But on the VHS tape, it does call him a data analyzing robot youth life form. So
okay,
that is a little bit of a spoiler.
Sure. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. James, why don't you tell our listeners what this movie is all about?
This movie is about a young boy named the eponymous D.A.R.Y.L. And after he is found alone with no memory of who he is, he's placed with a loving foster family. D.A.R.Y.L quickly displays extraordinary intelligence, video game skills, and athletic ability. That's because D.A.R.Y.L is not a normal child. In fact, his name is D.A.R.Y.L, which stands for Data Analyzing Robot Youth Life Form. The scientists who created D.A.R.Y.L take him from his foster family and discover that he has developed human emotions. The military then declares the experiment to be a failure and orders Robot to be destroyed. But his sympathetic creators help him escape. In the end, D.A.R.Y.L fakes his death and is secretly reunited with his foster family, finally able to live like a real boy.
Aww. Okay, so this movie came out 40 years ago. I'm going to guess, because I watched the movie, that it had a very, very small budget. And I'm also going to guess that it bombed. Actually, that's not really a guess. I read that it bombed. But how much money did it make, James?
Yeah, it wasn't a moneymaker. The movie opened on June 14th, 1985, and it had a budget of $10 million. It made about $7 million.
Oh.
It really had no chance. That weekend, number one is Rambo First Blood Part 2. You got the Goonies in there. Beverly Hills Cop is in its 28th week in the top 10. You got James Bond's there. Fletch is there. Brewster's Millions. This movie really had no chance. There was a lot of stuff for kids. Are you going to see the Goonies or are you going to see D.A.R.Y.L? I mean, it's really a no-brainer if it's June of 1985.
I wonder how many Mets fans went to see this movie thinking it was about Darryl Strawberry. I'm guessing very few. But maybe there were a couple. Maybe they just wanted to go, Darryl. So the way the movie starts is weird. And not because it starts in the middle of a car chase and there's this man who we don't know and there's a kid in the backseat and they're evading capture somehow.
I think it's pretty cool, actually. I kind of like the opening. I was like, all right, this is not bad.
Really?
I'm saying the very first second, I'm like, all right, I'm digging this.
Well, I mean, the fact that it starts with a car chase isn't weird, but the way that they film this car chase is weird. There's not suspenseful music playing. There's not really any acting happening with the old man driving the car or the kid in the backseat. And, okay, fine. It's a robot kid in the backseat, so he's not going to have a lot of emotion. Fine. But the guy who's driving isn't like, oh no, they're after us, and looking around all paranoid. He's kind of robotic too. He's terrible at driving in general, and fine, maybe because he's just a scientist. He's not James Bond. He wouldn't be good at outrunning a helicopter or whatever, but it's just strange. It doesn't feel like there are any stakes in this car chase because there's no acting, no dialogue, no music really. It's just a chase for the sake of a chase. And then D.A.R.Y.L gets out. The guy drives off a bridge, off a cliff. Okay, I guess that's sad, but I just don't know what's happening. And it's not confusing in the way where, it's intriguing and I'm dying to know what that was all about. It's just really bizarre.
I agree with you, bizarre, in the way this scene ends. He kills himself. He does not get pushed over. He doesn't get into an accident and falls off a bridge. He just deliberately drives off the bridge and goes into a river. And, there really is two reasons you do that. One is because you absolutely have some secret. You absolutely cannot have the government know what you have, but that's not it, because they know exactly what he has. He has D.A.R.Y.L, and it's a robot. You don't have an atom bomb there. You're not going to vaporize him. So even if you drive off a cliff, it's not going to be destroyed. That would be another reason you could kill yourself. You could destroy the evidence. But the third reason, is some horrible torture and death is going to be better than this. That's not it either. Or maybe even like I had to distract them even like 2 more seconds. That's another reason. Yes, 4 reasons there. That's not what D.A.R.Y.L needed at all. Had he given himself up and gotten arrested, they would have still found that D.A.R.Y.L's not in the car, even though they find him at the bottom of the ravine. I guess what it buys D.A.R.Y.L an extra 20 minutes that they get to the bottom of the ravine, I guess. That's what he kills himself for. It's just so weird.
It's very strange. And then D.A.R.Y.L is brought to an orphanage, I guess, and Elaine and Howie Fox work there. Howie Fox, who runs this orphanage, he tells his buddy Andy, hey, guess what? We have a kid for you to foster. Andy and his wife Joyce are very excited because they desperately want a kid. Joyce says they're never going to give us a kid to adopt if we don't foster first. And I know very, very little about this, but I don't think that's true, that you have to foster a kid before they'll allow you to adopt a kid. But also, the Foxes are apparently neighbors and best friends with the Richardsons. And if you can hook up your friends with a kid because you work at an orphanage and your friends don't have a kid and they want a kid, why have they never done this before? Why haven't they placed a kid with them before? I'm not saying that I think that's really how it works, or even that that's how it should work, that, you can just pass off kids to your friends. It's not like if you work at a deli and you give your friends a free sandwich every now and again. That shouldn't be how it works with adopting children. Basically, you can't give your friends your orphans.
I agree, Al. You generally don't do that.
Right. But D.A.R.Y.L becomes best friends with the Fox's son, Turtle. I was kind of expecting to find out at some point what Turtle's real name was and why they call him Turtle, but that doesn't happen. He's just Turtle. Fine, whatever. His sister, he calls Hooky because she acts like a hooker.
Oh, yeah.
I was like, what? What the hell? How is that in a kid's movie? It's definitely played as a joke that this kid is saying that his older sister acts like a hooker because she dates a lot of boys in town. But it's definitely surprising. It's definitely out of place in this movie where pretty much everything else is G to PG rated. The parents are talking about why this girl is dating such and such boy, and D.A.R.Y.L says, well, Turtle says that she only likes him because he has the biggest. And then the mom is like, D.A.R.Y.L! And like the length of that pause is way too long. It was just very poorly edited. But then Turtle is watching his sister from the window when she's out on her date, and he's talking to D.A.R.Y.L on the walkie-talkie, and he says he's practically raping her, except she's cooperating. It's like, you know what? That doesn't belong in this movie. Sorry.
The joke, it's outdated because it's like a hooker is just like, I don't know. I haven't even heard that term. It's like a SVU is like, yeah, this prostitute or escort or something like that. Like when they said that word, it was like, I haven't heard that word in decades. It's just, isn't that like really kind of out of the vernacular?
Yeah, I think so.
But the thing that really bothered me about this was really just, I'm looking at it, maybe scrutinizing too much, but I'm like, how the fuck does a robot not have a dictionary of every general English word? I mean, I know it's a little nitpick thing, but that's what really bothered me about, like, why doesn't a robot know this? I get it, because there is a payoff later, because there has to be an inside joke when they're talking to the computer, which is essentially D.A.R.Y.L's mind, and it has the inside joke, hey, Turtle, I still don't know what a hooker is. It even looks stupider when it's coming from a computer terminal, because I know that D.A.R.Y.L is a computer, but really reading reading it from a computer terminal, especially today. Like, it just seems like, I don't know, it just seems especially stupid.
Yes.
I just didn't get the real computerness of D.A.R.Y.L. Like, he basically is no different than your typical super duper smart genius kid that you see in an 80s trope or an 80s film or an 80s TV show. He's really good at pole position, which is a video game.
Yeah.
He taps on an ATM, which I don't really think allows you to hack into someone's account and put $1 million in there.
That never pays off, by the way.
You're right. Yeah. But like they do in Terminator 2, like he's a clever kid that steals money from a bank. Like, he's athletic that he's able to hit home runs, I guess, is like the only thing that I see that's kind of robotic about him. I guess he's able to be a pilot, but again, I would imagine any super smart kid, I mean, talking about an 80s movie smart kid, I just think there's a missed opportunity. Maybe it's because it's the 80s and the special effects, but I think they could have had something about him lifting up a car off of his adopted mother or something. And, that's an easy special effect to do in 1985. Like, I just thought there was no real big payoff to him being a robot.
Well, you see him do really good at pole position. You see him able to grade all of the math questions on the test in his mind. You see him get really good at baseball. If you're going to go into it thinking that the title isn't a spoiler and maybe it's supposed to be something of a question mark, okay, these are your quote unquote hints that there's something special about the kid. The baseball scene is really long. They show a lot of this game, and there's some quote unquote character development plot that happens where D.A.R.Y.L learns that he should mess up sometimes, that he can't be perfect. Turtle explains this to him, that if you're a perfect kid, then you will make your parents feel unwanted. I did at least a little bit appreciate the fact that what Joyce wants is to be needed as a mom, because before that, what she complains about is that D.A.R.Y.L makes his own food and he cleans his room and he folds his own laundry, so he doesn't need a mom. And it's like a very cringy 1950s housewife kind of description of what a mom does. That kind of made my skin crawl. But then later on, it's more than that. It's that she needs to be needed. She wants to help. She wants to give him advice. And so that all comes into play in the baseball scene when he strikes out on purpose, curses out his parents, and then gets a lesson learned. Hey, it's okay to be upset, but you don't talk that way. Okay, next time I'll get upset. I won't use that language. And there's a big hug. It's sweet in theory. I mean, the execution is pretty terrible. I did appreciate when Turtle was like, hey, I told you to mess up. I didn't mean for you to cost us this game. And I was like, well, yeah, but you didn't really explain that to D.A.R.Y.L. You just said mess up, and now he's messing up and you might lose the baseball game. But D.A.R.Y.L isn't the hero. Turtle is. Turtle drives in the winning run.
I think the best parts of this film are D.A.R.Y.L and Turtle.
Yeah.
I thought the two of them were very good. I think every scene they were in was very good. I think the story of a boy robot and his best friend human is a very intriguing story. I thought Turtle was going to be a little more integral in the plot at the end. I thought he was going to really help save the day a little more.
Yeah. By the way, the baseball game ends with a freeze frame, which is very, very weird. And then it goes to D.A.R.Y.L and his parents leaving the baseball field with their arms around each other. And then there's a fade out. It's just like, wait, why would you do a freeze frame a third of the way through a movie and then follow it with more footage from that same scene and then a fade out? And then there's also just a lot of weird sideways wipes that keep happening. The editing and direction are abysmal. But then the government lab people show up and they take D.A.R.Y.L back to the lab. There is the quote unquote reveal that D.A.R.Y.L is a robot. The movie takes a turn here where it's kind of just building out this world and the experiments and the government contracts. And wouldn't you know it, it was artificial intelligence designed to be a super soldier. Sure, why not? That's what you would expect. I mean, that's from every movie about robots and artificial intelligence and super weapons. I mean, that's always what it is. Whatever. I did have to laugh when the good doctor, Dr. Stewart, says that he really wants to bring D.A.R.Y.L's foster family and his friend back to the lab after the people at the Pentagon tell him that the project is shut down, after they tell him that this is not what they were looking for and this is not the super soldier they wanted and it all has to be destroyed. Then the doctor's like, I can give security clearance to whoever I want, and I can't imagine why the Pentagon would have a problem with me giving these civilians the clearance. It's like, no, you should imagine why they would have a problem with it. And then, of course, they come into the lab and he tells them the secret that D.A.R.Y.L's a robot. And then, of course, all of the army guys show up very upset. But why wouldn't he think that that would happen? He really should have understood that this big government secret is a thing you can't just go and tell a bunch of random people about, especially a kid.
I had no idea why these people were told. The only reason, and you could write it into a film, is that somehow they needed Turtle to talk D.A.R.Y.L down or something like that, and they needed to get him back or something.
Sure, he refuses to function unless...
Right.
But also then that wouldn't work because they've been ordered to shut the project down at that point.
There'd be a couple things that have to change, of course. But
yeah.
Al, I had the exact same thought as you. Why are they telling these civilians any of this? And how the hell did they get clearance? And even in 1985, you need some badges or you need something. I don't think the guy can just go, they're with me. This 7-year-old kid is with me. It's not bring your kid to work day at the secret android lab. There was no reason the government should have let them talk to them.
Right. And then, they have to shut D.A.R.Y.L down because the Pentagon bigwigs show up, and they do it, but kinda. They only make it look like D.A.R.Y.L's dead, and then they sneak him out.
How did they find it out, Al? How did they find it out when they looked at the terminal?
Oh, because it says, I hope we get away with this, ! Why is that on the computer screen?
Because I think all of D.A.R.Y.L's thoughts go through that terminal.
Oh. So they're caught because of the text on screen, but also there's another doctor, Dr. Lamb, who rats out the other doctor, Dr. Stewart, and is saying, no, this is just a machine. He is not alive. But then she comes around and thinks that D.A.R.Y.L is alive, and she has a line where she says that a machine becomes human when you can't tell the difference, which is kind of paraphrasing the Turing test.
Right.
That's how artificial intelligence becomes more than AI, is when you really don't know. But it's fine that Dr. Lamb comes around and realizes that D.A.R.Y.L is a real kid, but it just kind of happens off screen. In one scene, she's the bad guy ratting out the good doctor, and then in the next scene, she's helping D.A.R.Y.L escape. Maybe there was a scene that was edited out or not filmed or something.
Right. I had to piece together in my mind that they kind of played traitorous scientist, not traitorous scientist, that she could be on the side of the government. And I thought that's kind of what it was.
I'll buy that.
There are a lot of elements in this film that are quite intriguing, like these scientists that come around. Because at first I'm like, oh, these bad scientists are taking D.A.R.Y.L from the foster family. I like how Michael McKean's character, he's like, they didn't even ask any questions. That's a good little piece of exposition there. Because, obviously not going to show us the whole conversation, but apparently their missing child was gone for, a month, and they didn't ask at all how he was doing.
Right.
They just said thank you and picked him up. But a lot of these things just don't seem to come together in an intriguing way. Like the scientist, he helps D.A.R.Y.L escape, and he dies too. And I mean, there's no specific reason why this scientist has to die. I guess maybe he has to die because D.A.R.Y.L is now going to be able to escape alone in a... Yeah, I guess the scientist has to die, so D.A.R.Y.L could escape alone in a SR-71 Blackbird. The payoff was so obvious from earlier in the film when he goes to meet the pilots, and he even says, so if I were to enter in these coordinates, I would be able to get my way home, right? And they're like, yes, young man. And, it's like, I wonder if that's going to be a payoff later. I kind of think it's cool that he ejects from the plane at the last second. I did think it was a little bit lame that there's like basically a tracker in the ejector pod, but he's able to just flick off a switch that says like, turn off the tracker. I thought that was kind of lame.
Well, also, why does he steal a Air Force jet? Like, I understand that he needs to get home and maybe flying is the fastest way, but couldn't he steal a private plane, like a little Cessna somewhere? Wouldn't that be easier and draw less attention to himself?
I was thinking the exact same thing until I realized what he did. He has to fake his own death. A regular Cessna is not going to have an ejector pod. He's actually going to get blown up in that plane when they fire a missile at it. So that's what I think the point is. He knew about the ejector seat. He ejects at the last second. I guess Top Gun's not out yet, but people are really into fighters. Iron Eagle and all these kind of movies are out. I thought it was kind of cool. Obviously, it's like stock footage of someone ejecting from a ejector seat, but I thought it was perfectly fine. I thought that scene was cool, except if he's such a smart robot and he's able to put in any coordinates he wants, why does he put himself over water when he has a parachute? And, it just doesn't make any sense.
Well, they also talk about how they're going to shoot him down as soon as he leaves U.S. airspace. And you see the map, and it's like the second he's over the Atlantic Ocean, then that's no longer U.S. airspace and they can shoot him down. Like, I don't think that's right. I mean, I don't really know, but like just being slightly over water is okay, now we can fire on this plane? That seems wrong.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I just think it just seems, why the fuck would you want to destroy, like obliterate this robot? This is light years ahead of anything you want. Like, yeah, sure, I guess get rid of its emotion chip or ability to have emotions and code that out if you want to. There's no reason why they'd actually want to destroy this thing without cutting it open and learning everything about it. I guess that would be, more like, typical government thing.
Right. D.A.R.Y.L ejects, he ends up in this lake, he drowns, and he dies. But no, not really, because he's a robot and his brain can be switched back on. Whatever, fine. But I couldn't help but think, yeah, but you already did that. In Act 2, you killed D.A.R.Y.L, but not really, and revived him. And then you're going to do the exact same thing at the end of the movie? No, you can do that once per movie. Fine. That's kind of a thing on the hero's journey, the death, but don't do it twice.
Or it has to be something incredibly different. Like Turtle uses his electric toy to like bring it, shock him back. There has to be something like based on the earlier time of reviving him, and it doesn't work this time, so you have to improvise or something like that. I agree with you. It's just such a weird ending. It's just so random. D.A.R.Y.L wakes up and gives his best friend a hug, which I do think is very sweet because I like the chemistry between these two kids. I think they're very sweet together. But the movie then just ends, and I was just thinking, wait, what? Like, now what happens?
Right.
Honestly, I was wondering, wait a second, is everyone in town and all these families just going to keep D.A.R.Y.L a secret?
Well, do they have to? I mean, to me, the big problem with the secret is Turtle, because Turtle is a kid, and it's already been established that when you tell Turtle to not do something, he's going to do it. There's a scene where his mom says, whatever you do, don't ask the new kid about his amnesia. Smash cut to they're talking, and he says, so you don't remember anything? Which is fine because he's a mischievous little kid. But then if you tell this kid, by the way, you can't tell anyone that he's a robot, he's probably going to tell someone that he's a robot.
It might be a little different by the end. I think that could, like, he's gone through this whole epic thing. I think that might be doable.
Sure.
But I just kept wondering with other things, like, does D.A.R.Y.L grow? I mean, is he going to stay an 8-year-old?
Well, they do say that no doctor would be able to tell the difference with Daryl unless they did a scan on his brain. Because I was thinking about that too. Like, does he eat? Does he drink? Does he go to the bathroom? Does he sleep? Because if he's not doing those things, which you would imagine a robot wouldn't, then that's going to be pretty damn suspicious.
We see a scene where he's eating. I think in the airplane, he's snacking on something. And me as a pediatrician, if I examined him with or without an X-ray on the head, and another 8-year-old, but like Turtle, I probably wouldn't be able to tell a discernible difference that one's a robot and the other one isn't. But 2 years later, I'm going to be able to tell when Daryl's the exact same height, and I might send him for an endocrinology referral because he hasn't grown a single centimeter, inch, whatever. They might do something like this, and then we'll find this out. Or if it is an MRI, they'll rip that chip right out of his head. That'll suck. I know you're not supposed to think of these things, but I was thinking of these things about Daryl. Sorry.
That's fine. That is fine. All right, James, let me ask you, what do you think about this movie, D.A.R.Y.L? Does it stand the test of time?
I could answer the question almost. It stands the time as an 80s kids movie because they a lot of times don't really make much sense and they're not really that good. But as this podcast, does this movie stand the test of time? I'm going to say unfortunately no, because I think there's actually a lot of elements of this film on a philosophical level, on an acting level, on even a special effects and storyline plot level. I think are quite good. And I think with a better screenplay that tightened more on this boy, bookend it with the government that here and there, maybe little scenes of them getting closer. But generally, I was not interested in that because, again, Daryl does not display any super abilities to get away from the government more than a genius kid of an 80s movie. All the scenes and all the parts just don't really come together. I don't really think the movie is tight enough. You're right, this baseball scene's too long. Is it a movie about a government chase, or is it a movie about a kid who doesn't belong and or trying to make a best friend, or is it all of those things? And I think it winds up being none of them, unfortunately. This is not a terrible film, and I think someone could remake it. There was a planned sequel that was going to imagine like a mid-40s-year-old Daryl as an older android middle-aged guy trying to live in the modern world. It went nowhere, but I could see kind of an appeal of a comedy there. The reality is I could see a remake of this film made with a better screenplay, because I think the story elements are intriguing. This movie just doesn't work. I'm kind of glad I saw it. It was on that bucket list since I was a little kid for some reason. But no, you have no reason to see this film. What do you think, Al? 1985's D.A.R.Y.L. Does it stand the test of time?
It's funny. This movie was made 40 years ago. This is sci-fi from 1985. And it's about artificial intelligence. I don't know about you, man, but in my day-to-day life now, in 2025, all I fucking hear about and read about and talk about is AI. AI is in every email I get. Buy this thing, it has AI. I have conversations with friends. Did you hear about this new AI thing? I use AI at work. I had a very long meeting today about AI and how we can use AI and how we can talk about AI. AI is everywhere. And this movie is talking about AI and artificial intelligence. And it's asking some interesting questions about AI. If AI is programmed to talk and think and learn, and that's what people do, well, at what point is there a difference? Like, these are interesting questions. But God, this movie is so fucking bad that it just doesn't feel like it is relevant, that it is timely, that, hey, these questions that were asked 40 years ago, these are things we're still thinking about today, because it is just so amateurish in the way that this movie is put together. I mean, Michael McKean's in it, and I love Michael McKean. He's great. He might be the biggest star at the time in 1985. And, he wasn't huge back then. This is Spinal Tap comes out in 84. He's not a household name because of that movie. But the acting is bad. The directing is bad. The scripting is bad. Everyone just feels like they don't really know what to do. They're all just kind of going through the motions. It really kind of feels like a student film. It's a shame because it's easy to imagine a sci-fi movie from 40 years ago being just completely irrelevant 40 years later. No, we don't have flying cars. I forget exactly when Inner Space came out. That's a sci-fi movie from the 80s about shrinking people down. We can't do that in 2025 to go into your body and fix diseases and stuff. But we do have AI that is part of our lives, but it's nothing like this. I've mentioned my love for the horror movie M3gan before. We just saw the new one, M3gan 2.0. That movie is also about AI. It's about a robot that wants to be a person. It does kind of bring up some of the same kinds of things that you see in D.A.R.Y.L, where M3gan is like, hey, I learn, I'm doing these things. That's what you do. You're a person. Your brain is neurons firing. I'm code. What's the difference? And at a certain point, you can kind of wonder, yeah, what is the difference? I don't know. And by the way, I'm not saying that M3gan is a brilliant movie that really tackles these deep philosophical questions in a thought-provoking way. If you want to watch a movie about these kinds of things and be entertained, go watch M3gan instead of D.A.R.Y.L, because it's just going to be silly and more fun. This movie isn't fun. It's not entertaining. It's just dumb. It's just bad. And yeah, I saw that thing that you mentioned about the TV show. I saw that was talked about in 2020, so I'm assuming it died because of COVID and, all of the production delays and everything about that. But along with that, I saw that this movie kind of has a cult following, and people have rediscovered it over the years and say, oh, it's actually pretty good. I was like, really? People think this is good? No, this movie does not stand the test of time. Not at all. All right, well, that's going to do it for us this week. Next week, in honor of the new Fantastic Four movie that's coming out, The Fantastic Four: First Steps, we are going to look back at the 2005 movie Fantastic Four. I have never seen this. Have you? You must have seen this. I'm guessing you saw it.
Yeah, I've seen this. I've definitely seen it in full once. Not in the theater. I don't think I saw it in the theater.
All right, so I'm looking forward to that episode. In the meantime, we want to hear from you. We are at Test and Time Pod on Facebook, X, Instagram, and Threads. You can have your youthful robot life form send us a message. If you aren't sure what to say, that's okay too. Make sure you're subscribed on whatever podcast app you listen to us on so you don't miss an episode. And we'll see you next time, everybody.
Bye.